Imagine this. You're standing on a large African plain with the early sun spreading golden light on rolling hills. The air vibrates with stress. In the distance, you can hear the rhythmic chant of thousands of warriors, their voices rising like a thunderstorm. Spears gleam in the light and shields rattle in unison. The Zulus are a natural army, ready to defend their territory against a distant opponent armed with firearms, cannons, and imperial aspirations. How did this clash come about? Why does it remain one of history's most spectacular battles between two totally different worlds? Part 1. The Birth of a Kingdom. To comprehend the Anglo-Zulu War, we must first look back to the early 19th century. Southern Africa at the time was a patchwork of tribes and clans, many of which were at war. Then came Shaka Zulu, a visionary leader who united the Zulu people and established a mighty kingdom. Shaka was not an average leader. He transformed warfare by inventing the ikawa, a shorter stabbing spear that forced his men into close combat. He also devised the horns of the bull technique, in which warriors encircled their opponents, cutting off any option of escape. Under Shaka's leadership, the Zulu kingdom grew fast, combining several clans into a powerful, organized kingdom. For decades following Shaka's assassination, his successors upheld this legacy. By the 1870s, King Cetshwayo oversaw a nation that was both powerful and intensely spiritual. Zulu warriors were more than just fighters. They were custodians of a civilization based on traditions, ancestral ceremonies, and a deep relationship to the land. Part 2. The British Empire arrives. Meanwhile, the British had their own designs for South Africa. By the 1870s, they had already seized control of much of the region, motivated by a desire for diamonds, gold, and land. To them, the Zulu kingdom was more than just a neighbor, it was a barrier. Enter Sir Henry Bartle Frere, the British High Commissioner to Southern Africa. Frere was determined to bring the Zulus under British rule, believing that it would reinforce Britain's hold over the region. But King Cetshwayo had no intention of giving up his people's independence. Frere made up a series of arguments to justify an invasion, alleging that Zulu incursions and border conflicts threatened British interests. In December 1878, he handed Cetshwayo an ultimatum: disband your army and accept British control or face war. Cetshwayo responded resolutely. He added, "We are a warrior nation. We do not seek war, but we will not shy away from defending our land." Part 3. The Road to War. In January 1879, the British started an invasion. Their forces were headed by Lord Chelmsford, a seasoned but overconfident leader. Chelmsford thought the Zulus, armed only with spears and shields, would be no match for British artillery. He divided his force into 3 columns, intending to converge on Ulundi, the Zulu capital. However, Cetshwayo and his generals were not to be overlooked. The Zulus had been preparing for this moment for years, refining their war abilities and devising methods to outwit more technologically advanced opponents. Part 4. Isandawana, a battle for the ages. On January 22, 1879, the British established camp at the base of Isandawana, a tall hill overlooking the savannah. The camp was not fortified. Chelmsford assumed the Zulus would never attack such a well-armed force. He was wrong. As Chelmsford marched half of his forces out in search of the Zulu army, 25,000 Zulu warriors appeared from the hills and surrounded the British camp. Their war yells echoed through the air as they advanced, performing the horns of the bull technique with deadly accuracy. Despite having modern guns and artillery, the British were outgunned. Their ammunition supply dwindled, their lines snapped, and mayhem ensued. By the time the sun fell, more than 1,300 British men had died. The Zulus, while successful, suffered significant losses as well. The Battle of Isandawana stunned the world. Never before had an African army destroyed a colonial power with such decisiveness. Part 5. The Turning Tide. The British response was quick. and severe. Reinforcements poured into Zululand carrying Gatling guns, heavy artillery, and new infantry. The fight became one of attrition, with the British demolishing Zulu towns, burning crops, and slaughtering livestock to weaken their adversary. A garrison of 150 British soldiers held off 4,000 Zulu warriors at Rorke's Drift, a small mission station, for 12 hours in a deadly struggle. The Zulus fought valiantly, but they were unable to penetrate the walls. The British lauded it as a heroic victory, yet it paled in contrast to the magnitude of Isandlwana. Part 6, The Fall of Ulundi. By July 1879, the British had regrouped to launch a final assault on Ulundi, the Zulu kingdom's center. Cetshwayo's men, however weakened, prepared for one final stand. Over 10,000 Zulu fighters clashed with a British force of 5,000, backed by artillery and Gatling guns. The combat was fierce and deadly. The Zulus charged with their trademark gallantry, but British weaponry annihilated them before they reached the enemy lines. By the end of the day, the Zulu army had been decimated, and their capital had been torched. Cetshwayo was apprehended and exiled. His empire was subdivided into smaller territories, effectively ending Zulu sovereignty. Part 7. The Legacy of the Anglo-Zulu War. The Anglo-Zulu War was a catastrophe for all sides. The British learned the consequences of underestimating their foes. For the Zulus, it was the end of an era, a last desperate attempt to stem the flood of colonization. However, the Zulu spirit lives on. Their songs, dances, and stories evoke memories of a time when people stood together against one of history's biggest empires. The Battle of Isandlwana is remembered today not only as a British defeat, but also as a triumph of resilience, strategy, and heroism. As a result, the story of the Anglo-Zulu War teaches us that history is more than simply dates and wars. It is about the human spirit, the struggle for freedom, and the enduring force of culture. Thank you for watching, and until next time.